what I'll never forget was, how do I describe it? There was this feeling about something amazing was going to happen, but we all didn't know what it was.
Hello.
Come home early.
I can't. I'm working.
I lit some candles.
I'm swamped.
I bought Bud Light.
For the great taste that won't fill you up and never let you down, make it a Bud Light.
Come again.
Yeah, he's got a pencil lodged in his...
Oh man,
I don't want to say that subtle marketing works, but I'm fully prepared in honor of you being here tonight.
In the 90s, you can't do now. My wife warned me that something was coming. I don't know if that's
She
what
did.
it was.
I got permission. I did.
Well
I
done.
did have a little moment where I said, every now and then, somebody may not want something to come back up. So I asked first, and she said, "Go for it."
I had a lot of fun in my early sort of commercial career. I got to do some fun ones.
Absolutely. Well,
Hilarious.
it was a great one, and it was a great find. And I sent it into the group chat to my family, and they all lost their minds as well, having known you in real life. So it was worth it.
Little spring chicken.
Exactly. Exactly.
well, Maury, thank you. This is my first time meeting you. I've heard the name 100 times. Nick has talked very well. You loved Homeland, so this is a really cool opportunity. But tell us a little bit about your Star Wars origin story. When did you get into Star Wars? What are some of your earliest Star Wars memories?
So interesting to come on these shows with you guys, because where I thought I used to be sort of a Star Wars aficionado, now I just the way it's exploded, like we were talking about in the world of Star Wars. I mean, my first exposure, it was 1977. I was 6 years old. There was a theater on Geary Street, San Francisco. What I'll never forget was, how do I describe it? There was this feeling about something amazing was going to happen, but we all didn't know what it was. And my dad got us tickets, and my mom took my sister and myself, and we met him there on Geary at this theater. And he came there from work, and we all stood in this line going into this movie called Star Wars. And then the world changed. So that was my first, the world changed. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. So I was a huge collector of all the figures and ships, old Kenner stuff when I was a kid. Probably if I'm giving too much information, just wait.
This is perfect.
And I gave them all away, which I'm so bummed about now. My son doesn't know that I think I still have an old ATST from that collection, which I'm going to give to him soon. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, I mean, it was magic, it was just magic. So I'm of the generation that the first three, were New Hope, Empire, and Return. I also wish that my stepbrother worked at ILM back in the day. So I remember going with him, and he took me in to see where they made the models and seeing the Hoth battle set done in perspective of big AT-ATs to smaller AT-ATs to smaller AT-ATs to smaller AT-ATs. And they had this room filled with, ceilings were probably 8-10 feet high in this just artist sort of studio, but the walls were stacked with just toy models, jets, tanks, Jeeps, everything. And these artists were they had this huge work table in the center. I still get goosebumps. And they would just pull out an F-16, and they'd open it up and they'd take wings and stuff. And that's how they were building these Star Wars spaceships on the table. And you sort of seeing this whole thing happen. Lucas Ranch was right up the road. So we'd go there for other reasons, things my family was involved with. So it was always around. It was very much my childhood. The second round of three, those all broke my heart, because that's what I mean of my generation. They just deviated from the sort of darkness and grit. They tried to pull it back. It just wasn't there. The Jar Jar stuff, it just wasn't, and I know I've met Ahmed, and heard his story about Jar Jar, which is wild. And then it's been amazing to see this sort of late reincarnation in the last, 10, 15 years of now what we can do in TV and film. Andor's really been the one of late where I feel like it's coalesced around all those sort of dark, gritty Star Wars themes that I love. And then, in terms of work, I've been fortunate enough to be the voice of the Smuggler in the Knights of the Old Republic video game for the last, I don't know, I think it's going on, it's the gift that keeps giving, 15 years or something like that. So I get to go in and do my sort of doesn't have to be perfect Han Solo, like a solo reference. I wouldn't call it an imitation by any means.
Right.
Which is just a blast, So
yeah.
It's so great.
It's interesting. It's funny. I have to bring this up because, you and I are a year apart in age.
Yeah.
And the prequel response, it's funny. People like to believe now in fandom that everybody loved the prequels, and it's this weird sort of revisionist history. And honestly, I've come to actually love the prequels. I can't wait to go back and see Revenge of the Sith. But I was at the New York premiere of Phantom Menace for Star Wars Galaxy magazine, and I remember celebrities walking out all going, that was a movie,
Yeah, I mean, in canon now, it all has such a different reference, right? Contextually speaking, but it really felt like a creative deviation from what I grew up in. And you could see the seeds. I mean, the Ewoks were kind of veering. There were little hints of sort of different tonality, but it still lived within a world that I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, that made sense. And then,
and it was that impossibility of trying to recapture when we were 6 and 7 years old, seeing it it just was not going to happen. And it didn't matter what was on the screen. It just was never going to be that. And that's the biggest challenge. And again, as we talked about Kathleen Kennedy before, what a hill to climb, right? To try to, keep everybody. You're never going to make everybody happy, I suppose, is the key piece there.
No, you're not. And I also think we're in a weird era now where I don't know, because we can. A friend of mine always talked about Brad Bird, the director of The Incredibles, to kind of where his deal is, even in the world of the infinite, the animation where you can do anything, right? He still plays with natural law. So there's still laws of gravity. And what I mean by that is I think it's once you get sort of this creative ability to do anything, I think it's a little harder to maintain tension. And when you can just tell any story any which way, because you've got the technology and the artistry and all that stuff, you have to be careful that you don't lose the grit part that keeps people sort of emotionally involved,
Yeah. Right. Just because you have the technology, it's the old Jurassic Park, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think, honestly, to me, that's my big, I like the Obi-Wan story, but I felt like they got so enamored with the volume that they kind of stuck with it. Which is why Andor, it feels like a Star Wars movie because it's shot in, they find these little weird locations on a beach somewhere or a building that looks like it should be in Star Wars, and they make it work. So,
yeah.
That dam that they shoot in season 1, that is a part of the whatever that the overshot, whatever it is, that dam shows up also in one of my wife's favorite TV shows, Outlander. And when the daughter, there's this carryover because it's in Scotland or wherever it is where they shot part of that. And so, but that's it. And that's what original Star Wars did, is it was shot in the Redwood Forest, and it was shot in Tunisia, and it was shot in these places that made it feel like a real thing. And like you said, Pete, Kenobi leaned a little too far into the volume. Book of Boba, they did some on-site stuff in California. There was a mix of it. But it really is, that era of, gritty Star Wars, like you said, Maury, bringing it back to this is what Star Wars feels like. I want to lean into something because, as I said a couple of times throughout this show, in my introduction, you've been in a million things that I've loved. You've got new things that you're in right now. We'll talk about Interior Chinatown in a little bit. We'll talk about the new movie that's coming out tomorrow. But you had just real briefly Star Wars: The Old Republic video games, Mail Smuggler. That's been something that you've been over to do over a long period of time. You were on with me on the original podcast of the Will Show. Gosh, at this point, it's probably been 5 years ago.
Yep.
And you told a story about Star Wars Battlefront. And I told you earlier this week, I wanted you to tell that story again because we have a bunch of folks that watch, that play video games, and this is just such a great, fascinating story. So I'm just going to throw it to you and let you talk about this sequel to Star Wars Battlefront that didn't ever happen.
It didn't ever happen, and the story I was told it is in a vault somewhere. The company was producing it was kind of running a Ponzi scheme, and it got lost onto it, but they owned the property, so it goes. Yeah, I remember auditioning for it. I went in for it. It was this awesome role, the game, because I got to play twins, clone twins. One went Jedi, one went Sith. So as the game progressed, I got to do full Sith deal and Jedi deal. It was super fun. And, you know, I'm sitting there having scenes with, you're just giggling as an actor because in whatever capacity it shows up, like I'm having a scene with Darth Vader. Are you kidding me right now? This, you know, of course you want main one, but it's still like, no, it's still happening. And then the best part was they did mocap on my face, but my body double looked like this. I don't have space to get up and do it, but he looked like some, my assumption was like some French, like cool martial artist. Because when I walked, I just had like crazy cool swagger. And I was like, oh, that is awesome. Anyways, yeah, it was, yeah.
And so as far as we know, and I remember you saying this before, like it's locked in a vault somewhere in France or some company, like you said, the company went under and it never, you know, happened. And we ended up getting Battlefront 2, which did come out and became its own separate thing, but it's not this other unreleased version that, like a couple of other things that exist, like what is it, 1313, and what's the Seth Green, the animated series?
Oh, Detours, yeah.
But Detours, like these other kind of lost Star Wars lore things.
I think I've over exaggerated probably my story in saying like I know some Hollywood lore, but it really, I mean, the amount, sort of what it takes for finally, there's so many things that just get dropped before they get to the scene, whether it is a changing of a guard at a studio where somebody's been nurturing these projects and they're their babies and they've got it all together and you're excited because they bought you and you think you're getting this break, and then the studio changes direction, politics change direction, mission statement changes direction, and this thing that was like about to happen just crumbles into sand. And it could have all the right pieces, all the investment, all the thing, and then and it just doesn't, or they buy the property and they say they're going to do it, and it just doesn't get done, you know? So.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I just read this Wonder Woman game, which was, I believe, a couple, maybe $100 million in production. Just, you know, there was a change and it went away. So it's wild that it's, that these sort of things just, and now as an actor, like, how long does it, like, do you ever get used to that? Like, I had that great role and it didn't happen for whatever reason.
A buddy of mine, Kevin Durant, amazing actor, said something once. He said, he's like, I can mourn it for 24 hours. So I think because I don't know if you ever, you want to invest yourself in something, you know, anything, whether sports, whatever you want to put your everything into it. So otherwise it should cost you a little bit, but you can only give yourself a little. You got to give yourself a time frame.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
I'm getting more used to it, Pete, because I think, again, I just keep starting to produce is really, after being in this business in my way for, I don't know, 28, 30 years, the produce thing is really opening my eyes up more to, I feel a little bit naive in a way of like how it really kind of works, you know?
Yeah.
So that's helping me get used to it, I think.
Well, and speaking of producing, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about, because you have a movie that you worked on that comes out tomorrow.
Yeah.
I definitely want you to talk about that. You have also been in several things here recently. Interior Chinatown, which is on Hulu. I highly encourage everybody to check that out. That's a bunch of fun. You were in an episode of Creature Commandos on HBO, which got a bunch of, you know, coverage.
People love that show.
And you know, that right now is hilarious.
Yeah, it's so great. So, but tell us about My Dead Friend Zoe.
I'm really excited about this one. Thanks for letting me chit chat about it. It's certainly not Star Wars. I met Kyle Hausman Stokes as the writer director. He's a combat vet, served in Iraq. I met him about 15 years ago, and it was one of those cool. It's ended up being one of those cool I can't believe this all worked out. I did a short film and he showed up, and I had this very strong feeling like that is a cool guy. The energy he brought to set, and he just showed up to help. Like it was clear he was just there to be helpful. I was like, I want to work with that guy. I want to help that guy. Cut to 15 years later. He actually called Allie, my wife, Alexis, to talk to her about producing something. And in the conversation, he says, do you know Maury Sterling? And she's like, yeah, he's in the other room. So we reconnected. And I was kind of getting into it was right when I was getting into the producer stuff. And I was like, anything I can do to help you. I just recently met some financiers through a buddy of mine. And there was just it just worked. He called me for advice. He said, I need some actor advice. I said, sure, shoot. What is it? He said, I'm meeting with this actor. How should I comport myself? What should I do? And I was like, well, he's interested, so you don't have to do much. Like, he said yes to the meeting. I said, who is it? He goes, Ed Harris. I went, okay. And Ed Harris signed on. And because of that, the money that I had sort of in contact with, it just made sense for them. And that kind of launched them then to the next stage. So I played a small, crucial part in kind of getting it all done. It's based on, as Kyle puts it, it's 93% autobiographical. It's about the loss of two of his platoon mates. He lost to suicide when he came back, and sort of him processing his guilt. The performances are incredible. The cast is incredible. There's a real message to it. It's earnest, it's moving, and it's cool. And it's amazing that it's getting this theatrical release on Friday. So get your butts in the seats. It's a really neat film. It's one of those where, there are these things in life where we get to do where you go, okay, that one really meant something here. That's different. All the other stuff is great, but there are those other ones you're like, I just feel really proud to be part of it. So that's that one.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah, it's cool.
So
that's excellent. Well, and I know you've always got, multiple things going on. Do you have anything that, you've got your eye towards coming up next? Anything that we can kind of be looking for on the horizon?
I'm working on the new Suits LA right now, shooting a handful of episodes there, which is super fun. Yeah. Interior Chinatown came out last year. And then another film I acted in and also helped produce. We shot in April, that we're kind of getting that one, finish that one up, and it's in post and hustling that to get that one where everybody can see it, which is about a female MMA fighter in Montana who gets some.
Remind me of the title of that. Is it?
It was Wild Animal, and now it's called Baby Love.
Okay. I knew it was originally Wild Animal, and I was trying to find it doing some research, and I couldn't find that one because I figured it had changed.
That one, we get that one started. There's some good Instagram stuff on that one that's starting to pop up, sort of to,
outstanding. Well, there's so much to look for. I have to ask about one other thing. You are also, and I know this because I've listened, you are also a podcaster. There was Everyday Masters for a while. Is Everyday Masters going to come back? Do we have some more episodes coming?
We got too busy. I think it was a good, it would be fun to bring it back. It was more work than I think we were expecting. And my buddy Craig, who is my co-host, was doing all the I was doing the classic actor thing where I'd show up and do the podcast and then flit away. And he was left, he's a real producer. So he was doing, putting hours of labor in after to edit. And I was like, see ya.
And for anybody that wants to go and check it out, you can look it up. It's called Everyday Masters. And it's great because the concept is, and correct me if I get this wrong, but basically you talk to folks who you felt like had some sort of mastery in some subject, some part of life aspect, in order to be able to learn and gain insight from it.
Yeah. Yeah, and also trying to really leverage. I think there's a lot out there about mastery. The everyday piece is maybe you knock yourself for playing, Sudoku too much, and your mom's saying you shouldn't do that so much. But if you've put actually 20,000 hours into Sudoku, you're probably good at it. And there may be a way to leverage something. Maybe there's approaching people because they're doing something interesting, but then also asking them about other things maybe they do that are kind of their secret habits that they wouldn't necessarily think are great, but you can leverage into success.
Absolutely.
That's cool. We got to get you in a Star Wars next. We got to see you. We got to do? We got to hook up John, Tague, and Maury. I feel like there's there's a thing there. I don't know what it is. I feel like there's that.
That would be unbelievably dreamy to play. Especially if I could play a bad guy, because my kid.
That's right.
My kid would be like, "All right, Dad, you nailed it."
Yeah, you got it. Get some street cred at home.
Yeah, the good guy, he'd be like,
yeah, whatever.
Whatever,
Well,
Dad.
yeah,
it
no,
is.
we're all about the Empire and Sith in this house.
That's right, without a doubt. Well, it is always a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for tonight. And we can't wait to see, everything that's going on. We encourage everybody tomorrow, go see My Dead Friend Zoe in theaters.
Great.
And just based on the trailer, you can look the trailer up right now. It looks phenomenal, and I very much can't wait to check it out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
It was great meeting you, Maury, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Likewise. Be great. Always love seeing you guys. Yeah. Love the show. All right. Bye.